But first, let's talk about Reno barbecue. What's your favorite thing about Reno barbecue?
Man, it's hard to choose, but on Father's Day, I'll go with the family angle that it's a family run, family supported business. I don't even know how some of the people are related, but you know, they've got the boutique next to the original location in Olton, and it feels like just a bunch of, I don't know, kids, cousins, whoever helping out to run the show over there. So I know you're a big supporter of small business, local business. So if you're looking for a bite to eat in the Lubbock area or anywhere in West Texas, not only is the food delicious, but you're supporting a good family and a good local business.
Well said, Kyle. Well said. The people. It's as easy as that.
The people.
Um, so the Texas Tech coaches have been tweeting a lot, and it's there's two things to say about this. Okay, the first thing is that there have been a lot of commits over the last 2 weekends for official visits, and we talked about this briefly last week. That when you can get guys on campus and they commit, it speaks to your level of recruiting. It speaks to your facilities. It speaks to the relationships where you get them face to face. You can close the deal. But there seems to be more than just a couple of tweets for commitments this weekend. Like you might have locked in a couple of big ones. Um, I always think back to the Michael Scott gif, and a lot of them are apropos. But the one that says, I'm ready to be heard again, always feels right in recruiting, especially with Texas Tech, because I am ready, Kyle, to be heard again. And if this Micah Hudson smoke is real, um, you have all the reasons to be excited. And you're not talking about a top 25 class anymore. You're talking about a top 15 class.
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint where exactly I started to believe a little bit on the Micah Hudson deal. Because for a while there, it's like, okay, he's a 5 star, he's a top 10 recruit in the entire country, any position. He has an offer from Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, you name it. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, like we might get him for a visit, but it's like he's not coming here. And then it sort of evolves, and like you read the coverage on places like RedRaidersports.com, and you're like, okay, like we might legitimately be in his top three or something. And now it's reached the point where you're like, okay, yeah, if he commits somewhere else, I'm going to be disappointed, which is an insane thing to say a year and a half into this Joey McGuire era, because I think you and I both knew that he would recruit better, but I was thinking like high end 3 star, low end 4 stars. I was thinking Eric Ezukama, Tyree Wilson types. I know he was a portal guy. But I was like, we're going to up our game from competing against group of five schools, and we're going to start beating the likes of Oklahoma State and Baylor for prospects. I did not think that a year and a half in with an 8-5 record, which is nothing to sneeze at, that's certainly progress in its own right, that we would be taking a guy that could call any university in the country right now and they would accept his commitment. And he still hasn't committed. If he does commit, if he commits in 5 minutes, I'll celebrate for like 2 seconds and then be like, well, it's 6 months till signing day. So even if he commits, I'm going to kind of not let myself get all the way there until the ink hits the paper. But yeah, it's that one recruitment, which isn't going to make or break this class, because even if he doesn't commit here, you have tons of other dudes. And I think silently committed dudes also on the way. But if you're able to do that, it would send shockwaves across the recruiting landscape, the college football landscape, and sort of signify to the rest of not just the conference but the country, like, okay, things have changed quite a bit in Lubbock, Texas.
When you go from a bunch of classes where you don't have any 4 stars and you're struggling to get a bunch of elite talent, and you flip to 5 or 6 4 stars in the first class of Joey McGuire, the first full class, you're going to get to that number again with maybe a 5 star in the mix. It's just such a jump. And we've talked about recruiting. It's not like we haven't been talking about it. I mean, this is why you hired Joey McGuire, because your recruiting was in a deficit in West Texas and in the state of Texas, period. And I think we all believed in Joey McGuire and his recruiting ties, but it just feels like he is outpacing his even his outlandish expectations. Like it feels like they set the bar low for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they set it really high.
Yeah. And I think that they would tell you, I think the staff, even some of these guys that are sort of within that realm of what everybody thinks is reasonable for Texas Tech, like let's take a high end 3-star, a 5.7 rated guy on Rivals or somebody like that. I think even those guys that are committing, a lot of times they believe like should be 4 stars, but don't have the offer list. They don't have alignment or agreement from the recruiting sites like Rivals or 24/7. But we've seen it a couple times. Like I'm pretty sure when they offered Calvin Simpson Hunt, maybe he was not rated yet because he was young enough. And okay, then he gets plucked by Ohio State, or I'm blanking on his name now, but you had a receiver. I think he was a 5.73 star. He gets plucked by Notre Dame, and so these are not. It's one thing if Oklahoma State or Baylor is flipping a guy, that is kind of frustrating. If it's Ohio State, Notre Dame, you're kind of like, okay, well, yeah, like you almost expect that to happen. And so all that to say, even some of these 3-stars coming in, I think that they're probably graded out differently by this coaching staff in a way that, like, if they were rated quote unquote properly as 4 stars by these sites, like we would have already had a top 20 class. With the last class that came in, Joey said this is the fastest class in the country. I've got the numbers to prove it. And speed is only one component of how good your football team is. But that's a big deal to have the fastest class in the country. Like you just assume that, those guys are going to LSU or Georgia or Alabama. Well, at least last cycle, they were coming to Texas Tech. And so it's crazy. It's crazy times we're living in. And like you alluded to, this is beyond just Joey tweeting, let's go. Like you have Patrick Mahomes tweeting something about I think he was quote tweeting Kitley, saying something to the effect of like, oh, they're doing work this weekend. You had Blanchard last weekend on this first round of big official visits saying like, I've never seen this before. And you've got Brian Nance throwing gas on the fire of all kinds of speculation. It's almost to the point now, if they've like built this up with all these cryptic tweets and there is no Micah Hudson or Casey Poe, then it's like, I feel like y'all kind of tricked us a little bit. And not that we're not excited for high-end 3-stars, low-end 4-stars, but it seems to be above and beyond what they typically do during these types of recruiting weekends.
And especially when Casey Poe is in Norman today or this weekend, but still liking tweets about Texas Tech and quote tweet. And I hate that I've been sucked into the game of looking at likes. I don't like to do that. I am a staunch, I will root for them when they're on campus kind of guy. I always have been in recruiting. I try to be. But then you have Micah Hudson, who is at the root of all of this drama today with the Texas Tech coaching staff liking all of these tweets and tweeting all of these things. And there's a tweet from our friend, Mateo Nomeo, from 2 days ago that says it was really nice of Micah Hudson to stop in Austin solely to say what's up before heading to Lubbock to finalize his commitment to Texas Tech. Then Micah Hudson himself responds, honestly, I do have to say I agree with you on this one. Right after Micah Hudson has changed his profile picture back to him wearing a University of Texas uniform.
Yeah, he's a bit of a Twitter troll.
A bit?
And this is where I'll caution Tech fans. They think that everything Micah Hudson does on Twitter is only to troll Texas fans. I'm like, well, how do you know that all of his Twitter likes about Texas Tech that he's not trolling you? And so part of it is just me not wanting to get my hopes up and my emotions too attached to what a 17-year-old athlete decides to do with his life. And I'm the same as you. Like once a guy committed, I'll go watch his film and be like, okay, we've got 2 linebackers this class. I wonder if we'll take another, that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm not ever like, okay, has this guy landed for his visit yet? And like, what's he liking on Instagram? But it was easier to resist that kind of temptation when, no offense to anybody who's played here or committed here in the past, but when you're recruiting against like Kansas and Houston for a guy, like when you're in a top 3 with those 2 schools versus in a top 3 with Texas and Ohio State or whoever, it's a little bit different. And so I don't blame fans at all for getting excited. I will caution them. Remember kind of what's appropriate and what's inappropriate when you're dealing with recruits on social media. Like they're young, they're immature. So if they post something stupid, don't blast them for it. If he decides to commit to Texas, don't blast him for it. Like it's weird for adults to go trash 17-year-olds for making their college decisions. So like it, retweet it, send supportive messages, whatever, but don't be that weirdo, like that awkward fan example of, making an ass out of yourself on Twitter while following recruiting. So that's my only word of caution to folks.
This is the same guy that says, guys, the message board geniuses posted a bunch of message board posts from Texas fans. And Micah Hudson, I am Mike 1X on Twitter. Guys, this isn't very nice. I thought y'all loved me. Like, I mean, and you're right. You know, tagging recruits, I've always been against. Tagging players, I've always been against, even when it's positive. Like, they are so connected to the fan base, you don't need to be tweeting at them. Like it's your personal line to text a guy. I try not to do that. I try not to do even like writing their full name sometimes, especially during games, because you say things, and I've tweeted dumb stuff like, what the hell was Henry Colombi doing there? And then I'll get a DM 2 days later. Well, I saw this. It's like, okay, my
no, yeah,
I thought you did, but you know, I was in the moment. So
I've learned that as well, specifically from Alan Bowman, who would search his name on Twitter after every single game. And so you learn to tweet things like, you know, the quarterback probably should have thrown that a second sooner, or number 23 might need a breather, instead of being like, hey, at Joe Smith 25, you bum, that was a terrible block, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially with recruits, I hope you come here. I'm not gonna respond to your tweets though and ask you to come here. I feel like you're gonna make that decision with or without me. So anyway, I don't want to be the fan base that has like embarrassing interactions with recruits on Twitter and Instagram and all that.
Yeah. Was there something else we wanted to get to? I know it's Father's Day. Do you have a Father's Day message? This is, I guess, your second Father's Day.
Yeah, I'm just reading the comment.
Yeah.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling. Yeah, I've got to. Are we done with the episode?
No, well, we're gonna do a mailbag.
Okay, that was gonna be my final thoughts. So can I just say that?
Yeah, we'll save it for there. Let's jump into the diversified lenders mailbag.
Well, do you want to talk about the recruits that are in the door?
Yes, and then I also want to talk about Bob Huggins.
Okay, yeah, good call. You wanted to talk about Omaha as well?
Omaha. Yeah, TCU won today. And then Florida. Let me check that Florida score. But let's get into the recruits in the door. Tyson and the boys.
Starting to think Florida might be good at baseball.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so it appears from last weekend when you had a group of guys in for an official visit, and this weekend, and we're recording right now about 10 till 9 on Sunday night. So if you're listening to this in a couple of days, it may be outdated. It seemed like you had several silent commits last weekend, and maybe more just based on the bat signals and cryptic tweets from the coaching staff. But guys that you have in last weekend, you have the offensive tackle from Prosper, Ellis, can't remember, but he's huge. Both
Davis.
Yes. Big time prospect. And he's also like 6'7" and has a prototypical frame for an offensive tackle. You beat, I think, like Tennessee, A&M, pretty much you name it for his services. That's a huge pickup. And as Joey likes to say, mass kicks ass. And this dude, if he stays the course and signs with Tech, I'm sure he will kick a lot of ass once he gets here. Today, or this weekend, you get another wide receiver from the class of 2024, Tyson Turner. He's another one where I think James Blanchard is trusting his eval over the rivals and 24/7 guys, because this kid doesn't have a ton of offers, but neither did Will Hammond when Texas Tech accepted his commitment, and then Penn State, Oregon, A&M all come in, and so this staff has earned so much credibility that I don't worry anymore when a guy's next best offer besides us is Army. I'm like, okay, our scouting department is just better than everybody else's. That's basically my point of view on it at this juncture.
Will Hammond also top 6 at the Elite 11 showcase this past weekend.
Yeah, I think I can't remember who did the write-up, but they speculated that he would not be a 3-star for long, and he's a 4-star on some of these sites. But yeah, he's done a good job. He's kind of like an additional coach in the way he recruits other guys. Like, he wants obviously to play with some dudes in Lubbock, and so he's been all over social media trying to hype up these other dudes that are on their visit, get them to commit. You have another young man today out of Beckville, Beast, Texas, Jacoby Williams, and you put on his tape, and to me, it was Justin Stockton. It's one cut north-south. I'm faster than everybody. There's not much more to it than that. And that's not to say that he can't break tackles or that he can't juke or catch passes. He does catch passes on film pretty well. But that's basically his game is I'm going to cut, get north-south, and then I'm going to outrun you. And pretty much every play on his highlight tape is a touchdown. So he did a lot of that. He's an athlete, which we know the staff loves. He has a 14.26 110-meter hurdle time. And that's really good regardless. To give you context, I ran hurdles in high school with a young man that wound up running track at Texas A&M, and he was in that same ballpark, like 14.1, 14.2. So that's an NCAA Division I track time, and he's a football player. For additional context, you'll love this, Rob. I looked up my own 110 hurdles time because I was like, I just want to see how much this guy would have beat me by. Apparently, I ran the fourth fastest time in Westwood High School history at 15.53. So that probably puts him about 10 meters in front of me. So I'm like going over the last hurdle while he's crossing the finish line. So he would have dusted me. And he was a junior. I was a senior.
That's his time, though.
Yeah. So he can move. And I think hurdles is like can be a great barometer for athleticism, especially as it translates to football. We got the pair of inside linebackers, Justin Horn, Miguel Dingle, from this last class. They're both exceptional hurdlers. So clearly they have a formula, and they like guys that can, they look good on a football field and they can run track. But 14.2 or whatever this kid ran as a junior that's elite speed, elite athleticism, and it shows on the tape. And I think he's going to be a guy that can play in the slot for you, running back primarily. But if you wanted to motion him out, there's jet sweeps, there's bubble screens. You can use him in a bunch of different ways. So he's an exciting prospect.
And I believe there are 5 or 6 more that have not been announced.
11. Yeah, it seems like it.
Now, we don't know that for certain, but there are 12 in. You're sitting at 19th on 3 nationally, first in the new Big 12, with 4 or 5 guys that have at least one 4-star, depending on where you're looking. It's an impressive class so far, and you just can only dream right now of where it could land. You're already pacing, I think, to be the best class since last year. Last year was the best class since 2011. I mean, when do you start throwing around best class ever?
Well, I think you either need an overwhelming volume of 4 stars or you need a 5-star, kind of like signature to the class, like a Micah Hudson. I think those two things would make this different than anything you've had in 2011 or 2023. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Again, kind of going back to the Will Hammond discussion, other guys kind of look around at who's going where before they make their decision. If Oregon has an absolute dude at quarterback, some of the best receivers in the country are going to follow him and be like, I want to catch passes from a guy that I know can sling it. Same kind of deal here. Like if Micah Hudson shows up, that might open the door to all kinds of like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know other 5-stars were going to Texas Tech. Maybe I want to go there and be part of something new, build that into the new powerhouse rather than, go freeze my tail off at Ohio State behind 8 other 5-stars. So I think that there could be a domino effect to some of this if you were to get one Micah Hudson type. I don't know if it'll be this year or not, but I feel like as close as you are on Micah Hudson this year, if you have a season where you win 10 games, some of these guys are going to eventually come into the fold here in Lubbock. And if there is a domino effect and you can win 10 games multiple times, you might be talking 2 or 3 kids like this in every class.
I am ready to be heard again, Kyle.
I'm ready to be heard. So last season, just for more perspective, TCU, I'm looking at rivals, so this might be a little bit different on 24/7 or on 3. TCU has its greatest football season of all time They parlay that into the 21st best recruiting class in the country per Rivals. That is tops among anybody who's going to be in the Big 12 in 2024 and beyond. 2 spots behind them is Texas Tech with 1 fewer 4-star, 2 more 3-stars. And again, we're trusting James Blanchard's evaluations here. So let's, for the sake of argument, say you had an equal class to TCU last year. The two of you kind of are leading the pack for the new Big 12. After that, Baylor is 8 spots behind you at 31, Kansas State 34. I'm scrolling, Iowa State 41. And below that, I feel like you're just kind of swimming in a different pond. Fast forward to this year, and it's a long way till signing day. I'll concede that. Just ask Houston fans. They'll tell you it's June. Now, class of 2024, Minnesota has 23 kids in it. Houston has 1. So apparently Minnesota didn't get the memo that it's June. Texas Tech right now is 24th in the country. This is with what we think are several silent commits. Surely they'll move up a little bit. A couple spots behind a school called Alabama, a couple spots ahead of Miami, Nebraska, typical stuff. Next in line for the new Big 12 is West Virginia at 32, and their coach is on thin ice. I mean, if they have a bad season and he gets fired, who knows if that class stays together. You got to go down to Kansas at 38 to find the next new Big 12 school. Cincinnati at 40, TCU at 42. My point is, you do this a second, third class in a row, and you are kind of like undisputably the most talented team in the conference. I've always thought that was Texas Tech's number one deficiency. And people have their sayings about culture and stars don't matter and blah, blah. That's true to an extent. But like Rob, you and I could have a great culture. And if we play LeBron James and Anthony Davis 2-on-2 in basketball, they're going to beat us. Why? Not because their culture is better or because stars don't matter, because they're better basketball players. And if you get off the bus and onto the sideline with better football players, you have a better chance of winning the game. A concept that we didn't understand when we were recruiting at 84th best in the country. To me, it's the most obvious thing in the world, but it's what you were missing by a wide margin for way too long here. And you're about to be turning the page to the new Big 12 in 2024, and pretty quickly thereafter, you're going to have the more talented team every week. And if you couple that with strong coaching, good culture, that's when you can start to do things like win the conference championship, get into this expanded playoff, and do some special things that we'll remember forever as fans.
Amen. And let's not get ahead of ourselves. None of that has been locked in yet. But
I'm ahead of myself.
But I am ready to be heard again. Kyle, I want to throw a hypothetical at you. Let's say you think you're driving around in Cincinnati for about 7 hours, but you're actually in Pittsburgh, and you have a blowout, and then you get pulled over